Rabbi Levy, Dean Buckles, Dean Eldridge, colleagues, students, parents, graduates, and friends, I welcome you to the opening of the 214th year of the Lawrenceville School. Please remain standing while Reverend Lee delivers the invocation.
O Holy One, be with us this evening and support us all the day long until the shadows lengthen and the evening comes and the busy world is hushed and the fever of life is over and our work is done. We thank you for all who gather this day. Guide us in all our doings as we look for the way ahead. As this new school year begins, we find in sacred text these words which encourages us to be our best selves. Let love be genuine. Hate what is evil. Hold fast to what is good. Love one another with mutual affection. Outdo one another in showing honor. Do not lag in zeal. Be ardent in spirit. Rejoice in hope. Be patient in suffering. Persevere in prayer. Contribute to the needs of others. Extend hospitality to strangers. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse them. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Weep with those who weep. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be haughty, but associate with the lowly. Do not claim to be wiser than you are. Do not repay anyone evil for evil, but take thought for what is noble in the sight of all, if it is possible. So far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. Beloved, do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. O Creator, bless all who work, study, give, and receive from the Lawrenceville community. As we look forward, guide us in all our doubts and uncertainties. Give us grace to ask what you would have us to do, that the spirit of wisdom may spare us from all false choices, so that we might see the straight path ahead and continue to be a light in our community. Divine Creator, we thank you for what you have done, and we have hope and confidence that we will be prepared and ready to meet the opportunities set before us. We pray this in your most blessed name. Amen.
Please be seated. Dean Buckles, will you please set the stage for the official induction of our new students?
Good evening. My name is Greg Buckles. I'm the Dean of Enrollment Management here at the Lawrenceville School, and on behalf of the entire admissions staff over at McKinsey, but more importantly, on behalf of the entire Lawrenceville community, I say welcome to the new fall class of 2023. You'll be standing soon to take the school oath, but in the meantime, please raise your hand if you're a new student so that we can officially recognize and welcome you. Hands up. This part of our opening convocation is an important holiday for our admission staff. It's one of our happiest days of the year to have the work we have been at over the past year and a half or so manifest itself in the appearance of all of you. You're finally here as a part of this incredible student body. You worked hard for this opportunity, and we worked hard in selecting what we thought would be the best possible new class for this community. And we're fortunate to have you here at Lawrenceville. As we go about our challenging work of education and community living, this class will be fully immersed in and will eventually help lead the clubs and organizations that are the lifeblood of our campus. And while the applause and adoration that comes on the field after a big win over Hill or on the stage after a breathtaking production is indeed glorious and gratifying, It is the minutia of everyday work that is vital for you new students to jump into first. Every Wednesday and Thursday night, I wait for Mrs. Buckles to straggle in late as she oversees the staff of the Lawrence, get that paper to press for distribution on Fridays. Perhaps you're a new third former who might like to submit a story this year. Maybe you'll work your way up to features editor next year, and who knows, by your fifth form year, you'll be an editor-in-chief. But someone has to write that story on a house football game or a Tuesday night lecture first. When you attend a fun dinner at the Big Red Farm, like the second form did this past Friday evening, it's an amazing and impressive event, but someone has to feed those pigs and those sheep, pick those peppers and tomatoes, and gather that honey first. You might be an outgoing person who'd like to give tours to families. You could give tours for a year or two, apply to be on the tour guide council, and eventually, if you're lucky, be selected by the world famous Mrs. Mack to be a head tour guide. But someone has to come in F period to tour a family from Chicago whose plane was delayed first. And it is that unseen, everyday commitment to doing your part in a community that is the foundation of everything we'd like to see in our school. That is the pilgrimage to belonging. That is the passage to building. That is the pathway to becoming. Selected from a pool of close to 3,000 applicants, sitting amongst you now in this new class are your 250 classmates and friends from 22 countries, or 22 states in the District of Columbia, as well as 22 countries. You crisscross this nation, coming from Woodlandville, Washington, to Orlando, Florida, from Cambridge, Massachusetts, to Santa Monica, California. You're from Aspen, all right. You're from Aspen, Colorado, Chapel Hill, North Carolina, Austin, Texas, and Marietta, Georgia. You're from cities where you just have to say the name, no state necessary. Baltimore, Kansas City, Las Vegas, Chicago, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia. You're from smaller places where you need to add that state. Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, Appleton, Wisconsin, Gastonia, North Carolina. You're from Manhattan, Kansas, Manhattan Beach, California, and that Manhattan just up the road. You're from Plainsboro, Paramus, Pennington, from East Brunswick, West Orange, Short Hills, Old Tappan, and Upper Saddle River. You come to us from Canada, Colombia, China, Nigeria, Japan, Brazil, Sweden, South Carolina, Hong Kong, the United Kingdom, Mexico, Italy, Georgia, Bulgaria, Serbia, Thailand, Somalia, Hungary, Lithuania, the Dominican Republic, and Vietnam. For the third year in a row, the prize for coming the furthest is Singapore, almost 10,000 miles. And several of you are from right here in Lawrenceville. Lawrenceville continues to evolve as an institution committed to access, affordability, and diversity, and that commitment is reflected in your class as well as the entire school. This class is arguably the culturally, racially, socioeconomically most diverse new group of students in our history. You are artists and athletes, editors and presidents, first responders, and community volunteers. But far more importantly, more important than the accomplishments, the accolades, the achievements, all of you, including this new class, are a lot of just great all-around young people. I'm guessing a lot of nervous, excited teenagers, each of whom deserves to be here. Whether you founded a nonprofit or whether you elected to take that more challenging course and grind your way to a B rather than play it safe and protect your GPA with what might have been a less interesting course for you. Whether you wrote a novel or whether you passed up an opportunity to do something that might look good on an application to be a kind friend to someone in need. Rest assured, each of you presented something interesting, something unique, something worthwhile, which caught our attention. And so now I am honored to help mark an important transition in your lives, whereby on behalf of the Lawrenceville Office of Admission, I symbolically hand off this year's new class to Head of School, Mr. Murray, entrusting the faculty and the staff of the Lawrenceville School with the care of your minds, bodies, and spirits over the span of your time here. New class of 2023, you're in good hands.
Thank you, Dean Buckles. Will all of our new students please stand and repeat after me? Please stand. All of our new students. With strong voices, repeat after me. In becoming a Laurentian, I join generations before me who have led lives of personal honor, respect, and compassion. As a Laurentian, I hereby pledge to conduct my affairs with integrity, take responsibility for my actions, and defend those less able to defend themselves. You may be seated. Congratulations, let this be your official welcome. You are all now Laurentians. On being kind. Kindness begins where necessity ends, from the Lincoln Highway by Amor Tolls. My father used to tell me a story about his great-great-grandfather who lived in New York City at the time of the Manhattan draft riots during the Civil War. These riots primarily involved working-class Irish immigrants who were being conscripted wholesale to serve in the Union Army. It went without saying that they could not afford the $300 commutation fee whereby a wealthy individual could hire someone to fight in his stead. This simmering resentment against the draft, in turn, led to heated racial animus against Black Americans, both freed and enslaved persons, whose dire plight elicited little sympathy from the destitute Irish, who themselves had experienced severe famine and extreme deprivation as dirt-poor tenant farmers. Anger at being sent off to a brutal war to die for a cause they did not feel was theirs exploded into a series of uprisings and violent rampages that were quelled only when President Lincoln ordered intervention by military regiments. In one particularly cruel episode, as my father told the story, this ancestor of ours, his great-great-grandfather, who was Irish himself, was out and about in Lower Manhattan, and he came upon a mob that was setting off uptown to burn down an orphanage for African-American children. It was likely the Colored Orphan Asylum at 44th Street and Fifth Avenue. He raced ahead of the mob and arrived in time to warn the inhabitants of the orphanage and help the children get out in time. The orphanage itself was burned to the ground. I hope this story is true. I like to believe that it is, though I've never been able to independently verify it beyond my father's telling. Either way, this extraordinary gesture of goodwill towards others, of following one's better instincts, makes for a proud legacy, something for future generations to strive to live up to. But being such a lofty act also puts the gesture a bit out of reach, makes it somewhat difficult to emulate. It's more the stuff of heroes. It's easy to promise ourselves, if I ever came upon an orphanage being threatened by a mob, I'd surely intervene. We might think well of ourselves for making such a promise, but such opportunities are rare, and our resolve to do the right thing is likely and conveniently never to be tested.
What if we consider something slightly more ordinary, the kind of situation we are more apt to encounter in the normal course of things? My best friend once described to me an experience she had in the 4th grade many years ago. There was a new girl who had moved into town and had joined her class mid-year. The family lived in very modest housing and were of modest means. She did not wear the right clothes or listen to the latest music. At some point in her first few days, she had to have a routine checkup with the nurse at school, who found that she had head lice. People cringe when they hear of lice, but of course it is as normal a human experience as catching the flu and can happen to anyone, regardless of their hygiene. Well, this nurse marched down to the girl's classroom and announced that the new girl was going home because she had lice and that the rest of the class would now have to be checked. You can imagine the reaction. Worse yet, the poor girl had to stay home for a week until the problem cleared up, and then when she returned, the cruelty started. Her classmates taunted her mercilessly, called her dirty. Having not yet had the opportunity to make friends or find acceptance, she suddenly found herself all the more isolated, the butt of 1,000 daily slights. What a desperately sad, lonely, humiliating experience this must have been for her. Soon enough, this friend of mine noticed that what the girl was going through and decided to invite her over to her house for the afternoon. This led to another invitation and another. They became friends. Suddenly, this girl was no longer quite so vulnerable. Suddenly, she was not entirely exposed socially. Like the bully who backs off when even just one person sticks up for the small kid, the crowd backed off and left her alone. Eventually, they too began inviting her to parties and outings, and the lice incident was entirely forgotten. And by the way, that best friend of mine, I went on to marry her. I mean, who wouldn't want to spend the rest of their life with such a person? My point here, of course, is that while we may be inspired by stories of noble, heroic actions, it is the small, compassionate gestures in our everyday lives that make the real difference. The quality of life in a given community is directly determined by how frequently each of us takes advantage of the small, daily opportunities to follow our hearts, to show kindness. In this case, it took just a small amount of courage to go against the popular sentiment of the crowd. It made all the difference in another person's life, and it set an entirely different tone for everyone else in that classroom. In his book, The War for Kindness, Stanford professor Jamil Zaki writes about the profound importance of showing empathy. He says, empathy's most important role is to inspire kindness, our tendency to help each other even at a cost to ourselves. And yet, he goes on, kindness can often feel like a luxury, the ultimate soft skill in a hard world. He points out that Charles Darwin found kindness incompatible with his theory of natural selection, as described in his seminal work, The Descent of Man. If our natural impulse is self-preservation in a kill or be killed environment, helping someone else at our own expense not only leaves us vulnerable in an unforgiving landscape, it may even lead to our demise and therefore unable to pass on our genes. And yet, Zaki goes on to say, kindness may in fact be one of the animal kingdom's most important survival skills. This view certainly echoes the renowned Harvard sociobiologist E.O. Wilson, often best known for his groundbreaking studies of ant colonies. In his New York Times bestseller, The Social Conquest of Earth, he reflects rather optimistically on the human condition. One of his major questions in the book is to examine from an evolutionary perspective how social behavior not only enhances, but actually promotes survival. Ants he had found are highly social and precisely because of that, highly successful. And so are humans. In the human context, according to Wilson, our virtues are largely responsible for our success. Evolution favors our better impulses. Compassion, collaboration, and cooperation give us an edge as we struggle for survival in the cutthroat competition of natural selection. Greed and self-interest offer few advantages to our species. We are slow and weak, and left alone to fend for ourselves, not much of a match for a swift, hungry predator with fangs and claws. According to Ira Byock, an American physician who writes prolifically on medical care, famed anthropologist Margaret Mead makes a similar point. She was once asked by a student what she considered to be the first sign of civilization in a culture. One might have expected her response to be the making of tools, or perhaps burial rituals. But no, Mead said that the first sign of civilization in an ancient culture was a femur, or a thigh bone, that had been broken and then healed. She explained that in the animal kingdom, if you break a leg, you die. You cannot run from danger, get to the river for a drink, or hunt food. A broken femur that is healed is proof that someone has taken the time to stay with that person, bound up the wound, has carried the person to safety, and has tended the person through recovery. Helping someone through difficulty is where civilization starts, said Mead. We are at our best when we serve others. We are at our best when we serve others. Some of the most influential thinkers of our time see this ability to care for each other as an evolved trait, something quintessentially human. Even so, cautions Zaki, we don't always act on this evolved trait, this natural impulse to show kindness. We can, he says, but we often don't. The modern world has made kindness harder, he writes. He goes on to describe the ironic phenomenon that in spite of increasing urbanization, we feel more isolated and disconnected by nearly all measures. In a small village, passing by an individual in visible distress, we stop and find out if we can help. In a large city, how often do we walk by a homeless person suffering and in misery? The closer we live, literally on top of one another, the more distant we feel. To this, I would add the similar irony of social media. While in certain ways digital communication connects us, we are more networked, linked, friended, followed, liked, and shared than ever before in history. Facebook reports close to 3 billion active users, and it also draws us apart. Digital platforms somehow give us license to say and do things we otherwise, in any other context, would find reprehensible. How many of you have witnessed online insults and cruelties between people who would not dream of saying such things face to face in the common room of your house, or side by side around a Harkness table? Given that we have the highly evolved potential to show each other kindness, and yet we do so unreliably, we clearly have to make the effort. Which leads me to my main point. The question I want to ask this community as we kick off this school year. What kind of community do we want to be a part of? What standards of civility, empathy, respect, and kindness do we aspire to live by? We have a choice, after all. Certainly, COVID increased the challenges we face. During the pandemic, social development was impeded because the little stuff we had taken for granted, the very things that bind us together, routine polite greetings, simple civil interactions, everyday personal touches, suddenly were not possible. In the absence of being in person, digital interactions were normalized and social media use surged. If I only experienced you behind a mask, or more distantly as a small square on a computer screen, or even more distantly as some profile with a nickname on Snapchat, why would I be invested in your well-being? As we process some of the lessons from this period of time on our own campus, in some cases lessons learned the hard way, and as we seek to understand how we can do better, we need to recognize this choice. We need to choose to make an effort to tap into our natural empathy for each other. Recent experience right here at Lawrenceville has taught us that the stakes are high, that people can be hurt, that tragedies can occur. And so we need to get this right for everyone's sake. Saying something unkind because you haven't thought through how it might be perceived, or posting a mean-spirited comment on the spur of the moment, does not make someone responsible for a tragic outcome. After all, we don't always know the impact that such a gesture is going to have. But isn't that the point? We almost never know what another person is actually going through. We need to start by remembering that behind the brave smile they may put on, everyone experiences private challenges that they don't dare speak about. And we need to take to heart that comments can land hard and they can bring about tremendous unintended harm. A friend from Ohio once told me a story from his high school years, a story about how, as I say, you just never know what someone else is actually going through, and that story has stayed with me. This friend went to a big rough-and-tumble Catholic school on the west side of Cleveland. Because of where their last names fell in the alphabet, all during middle school and on to freshman year in high school, a certain student had the same hallway locker next to him, a small, shy, pimply kid who always seemed to be alone, except when the bullies found him. Now, my friend was a football player who went on to be a quarterback at Yale. Even as a high school freshman, he was a pretty big, confident kid. He watched these juniors in leather jackets come around every day and make this poor kid's life miserable. This boy was vulnerable, had no friends, and they were all over him. One day, this friend of mine had had enough. He suddenly grabbed the biggest kid by the lapels of his leather jacket, threw him up against a locker hard, and said slowly, "Leave him alone and do not touch him again, ever." His tone made the message crystal clear. Like all bullies, he made a few blustery comments, but had nothing to actually back it up, and he walked away. My friend also walked away and forgot completely about the interaction. 27 years later, he was at a high school reunion sitting with a group of friends. A guy walked up to his table, composed and confident looking, and said, "Carmen, I need to thank you. You saved me." My friend said, "I don't think I know you." The other guy replied, "Yes, you do. Our lockers were side by side for 6 years. You stood up for me one day, and you saved my life." Carmen still didn't get it. "I was done," he said. "Those guys had made my life hell, and I was done. I was going to end it. But when you stepped in, it changed things. I mean, you saved my life. I'm not kidding." You never know what a person is going through. A small gesture of unkindness can land far harder than you intend, and there's no taking it back. And by the same token, a small act of kindness can do far, far more than you anticipate. So this is what I mean when I ask, what kind of community do we want to be, and what are we prepared to do about it? As I say, I believe we have a choice. There are certain steps that we are already taking. We are rolling out, for example, a strategic plan for well-being. A number of you may recall a workshop I did last spring in the Healy Room where I gathered thoughts and ideas from a number of you. From that, and with considerable input from the faculty, we've crafted a vision statement describing the kind of community we at least aspire to be. The vision statement starts by saying, "Lawrenceville seeks to build an even stronger community in which all members feel mutual responsibility and have the opportunity to grow and thrive physically, emotionally, spiritually, and intellectually. Overall well-being is enhanced in an environment that promotes kindness, respect, joy, and a measured pace of life." We talk about the strengths of our house system, where every student helps make the house a fundamentally safe, friendly, and welcoming community. We talk about Harkness, the democracy of voices around the table. And we talk about the heart and soul of the entire community, with all members invested in positive systems of compassion, empathy, accountability, and self-advocacy, and a sincere desire to seek the best for all. Together, these become tangible aspects of the lived experience and well-being for all individuals, especially our students, who are central to our enduring purpose. But in order to fulfill this vision, we need every member of this community to lean in, and it won't take all that much if everyone participates. Maya Angelou said, "It takes courage to be kind," and she's right, but not that much. It takes cowardice to be unkind, to be cruel, that's for sure, but it does not take a ton of courage to be kind. You just need to follow your heart. The ability to do good is in every single one of you, and you just have to choose it. We can build our community one act of kindness at a time. Archbishop Desmond Tutu of South Africa said, Do your little bit of good where you are. It's those little bits of good put together that overwhelm the world. And we don't even need to overwhelm the world. We just need to shape our corner of the world. We just need to make Lawrenceville into the best possible version of itself. And I know we can do this. So yes, indeed, we will, of course, look for those loftier moments when we can do something memorable or heroic. It might be saving an orphanage from a mob, or more simply, standing up to a group of bullies. But let's not forget those even more common everyday opportunities when your roommate dares you to post an embarrassing photo of someone and you refuse. Or when you see a person on their own who just needs a quick, friendly word to tag along to dinner or to join the game of beach volleyball over at the Big Red Sport Court. Those moments add up. And if we act on our better impulses consistently, they become woven into the fabric that holds us together. They become the community, not just what we aspire to be, but who we are. Just remember, back in the 4th grade so many years ago, all it took was a simple invitation to come over to play after school, and that changed everything. And that's what I call being kind. So let's roll, and let's have a great year. Thank you very much. And now, Dean Eldridge, will you please present the House Awards?
Excellent. And after this, we will all sing the school song, and after House Olympics, I know that we are ready to do so together. When your house is called, would last year's House President and this year's House President come forward to collect your cup from Mr. Murray? The Chivers Cup. The Chivers Cup is awarded to the house with the highest GPA. The 2022-2023 winner of the Chivers Cup is Carter House. Right over here. The Green Cup. The Green Cup is awarded to the house whose GPA improved the most over the course of the school year. The 2022-2023 winner of the Green Cup is Kirby House. The Adams Cup. The Adams Cup recognizes the house with the greatest commitment to community service. The 2022-2023 winner of the Adams Cup is Stevens House. And finally, the House Cup. The House Cup is awarded to the house with the greatest house spirit. The 2022-2023 winner of the House Cup is McClellan House.
Thank you, Dean Eldridge, and congratulations to those houses. Now please rise for the singing of Triumphant Lawrence and remain standing for the benediction by Rabbi Levy, and also remain standing during the faculty recessional at the end. Will the Laurentians please come forward to lead us in our school song? Rabbi Levy.
As we formally begin our Lawrenceville School year, we look forward to a year of promise, of being careful and safe, and yet reaching out to meet, to learn, to explore, and experience, to participate in life and stretch our learning of what that entails, to stop and smell the scents around campus, the flowers and the fresh cut grass, the aromas from the bathhouse and the dining halls, to hear the sounds of our friends and newly found friends in sadness sometimes and in joy coming from the common rooms and from the fields, in the art studios, sitting across from you in the classroom, and sitting around you and beside you right now. To reach out, to really listen, to share a heartfelt hug, to laugh. To be kind, just to be kind, and to make that kindness and thoughtfulness your way of life. The renowned Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh wrote, "From time to time we look at each other and smile. It is the smile of awareness. It proves that we are happy, that we are very much alive." Best wishes for a happy and healthy and meaningful year here in our Lawrenceville embrace. Take a minute to smile. Thank you.